Ric Flair.
What is up, guys, and welcome to Deke's Mock Draft 2.0 Post-Combine, brought to you by Thoughts from the Bench and the Two Beers Deep podcast. We're doing it this way just because I wanted to try out some new formats in displaying our wonderful mock drafts this year. You have myself giving 2.0 this week, as well as the Rain King, if this does not drop before his. Next week, we'll get Dre, we'll get Brooksy, we'll get Mac if he wants to do a little research to throw one in there, as well as everybody's favorite Glue and Glitter combo member, Greg Malik. And if you don't get those in this video, it's just the first time you're watching Thoughts on the Bench stuff, check out the Two Beers Deep podcast and meet our entire crew of writers and everybody. A lot of fun, but we are here for the post-combine mock draft, which is my 2.0. If you are just checking out this video for the first time, I am just a kid from Pittsburgh that enjoys mock drafts. I do not talk to scouts, I do not talk to teams, but if you find out my mock draft is perfect, I understand your surprise, and the sarcasm in my voice is doing it justice. Let's dive right into the first overall pick in Deke's 2.0 mock draft. And I know a lot of people talk about, is it a prediction mock? Is it something along like what the team will do versus what they should do? The only thing I tell my guys when we do our mocks is no trades. Reason being is, you can't predict that. And yes, I do believe there's going to be trades, and I'll bring it up for each pick, but that's the only thing I give these guys. So everybody's mock is a little bit different. Mine today is a little bit going to cover needs of the team. Just things that I feel, things that you hear, nothing too crazy, a couple weird picks at the end, but let's get into it. So number one pick overall is the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, I think you'd be crazy in just looking for content to not make this guy the number one overall pick. Decently recruited out of high school, goes to Ohio State, doesn't really get it, goes to LSU, and has the single greatest, I don't even say arguably anymore, single greatest NCAA quarterback season. That is over, Tebow, that is over Newton, that is over Johnny Manziel, which, give your arguments there. But Joe Burrows came in, is the number one overall pick. He's the safest option at the quarterback position easily, but in this draft, love him. You could put him in Sharpie at this point. Second overall pick, we go with Chase Young for the Washington Redskins out of Ohio State. Chase Young was a Heisman finalist this past year, which honestly, the kid is unbelievable. He is a more surefire product than the Bosa brothers, is what some people are saying, which, means Hall of Famer, basically. A lot of rumors coming out of the Tua situation here, and I like Tua here in the sense that he could be the best player at this position, but I'm a big Dwayne Haskins guy. And I think that choosing Tua over a guy like Chase Young when you can pair him with Montez Sweat on a team that might be losing Ryan Kerrigan, I just love it. Third overall pick has been another one with Tua Tagovailoa being the conversation piece around, but I went with my guy, Jeffrey Okudah, out of Ohio State. I know some Lions fans, they don't love this pick. The main argument is that how do you, draft a cornerback that high? Well, when you have a guy like Okudah that really is the cornerback in this draft, he is the defensive back, the secondary unit person in my mind that is locked down on a team that plays a ton of man-to-man defense. It was a no-brainer for me. Okudah fits in nicely there, and if he does fall from the Lions, say they do go with an Isaiah Simmons or a lineman or, whatever situation, I could see him falling pretty heavily down the board just based on need. Fourth overall pick, you can take a lot of things here. A lot of mocks recently have Isaiah Simmons here, some other tackles, Becton, you could get into Wirfs. Wills is the best tackle in this draft for me, and I think that they just need to go with a safe pick right now, which is to protect their franchise quarterback and their franchise running back and just take something to cement that offensive line that has been so bad for so long. Next is the pick, the Miami Dolphins. When they were doing so poorly at the beginning of the year, everyone thought they were tanking for Tua. Well, they didn't even need to. At the 5 slot here, they get their quarterback of the future. It's going to come down to his physical a lot, and if he is able to work out to his fullest capability on the pro day. For me personally, I think Tua is a home run hit if healthy, and the Dolphins find themselves obviously quintessentially back into the Drew Brees conversation, where what if they would have taken Drew Brees? I think they get their guy here, and if this is obviously, before free agency, so they could go after Teddy Bridgewater, they could go after Marcus Mariota, they could go after something as an experimental, but I think Tua is their pick here. 6th overall, we go to Justin Herbert, the quarterback out of Oregon. He is a highly talked about quarterback right now, and it's a lot to do with him and Jordan Love's positioning. I think Herbert just has been the better prospect. He's been the better quarterback. He really hasn't excelled in college the way that everyone thought he would increase his stock so heavily. Last year, he was going to be considered taking the number 2 quarterback over Daniel Jones. It just depends on how you look at it. But the Chargers, with losing Phillip Rivers, it seems like a no-brainer for me that they would obviously step in, get their quarterback of the future, let Tyrod run for a year, and then get this team ready for a Super Bowl run. It has taken me a long time to get into Isaiah Simmons. And what I mean by that is just I'm not a big hybrid safety linebacker prospect guy. And I think that I'm not going to say I dislike Isaiah Simmons by any stretch of the imagination, because the dude can cover, the dude can blitz, the dude can tackle, the dude is a physical freak and blew up at the combine. It's just that sometimes if it's not the perfect system, it's a bad pick. The reason I like Isaiah Simmons to the Panthers, though, whereas most people have defensive tackle, defensive line, is to fill that Luke Kuechly role. Luke Kuechly obviously retired in the offseason, so even if you just get linebacker work out of Simmons, he is a big linebacker. He's a very fast runner. I think he can cover over the middle, so he does instantly fill that Luke Kuechly hole a little bit. 8 overall. A lot of people are going CeeDee Lamb here, and it's not that I don't like that pick. I do enjoy CeeDee Lamb as a receiver. I think he could be a top 10 pick. The Cardinals have their quarterback of the future. You need to protect him. They have a terrible, terrible offensive line. And getting an athletic freak like Wirfs will go the distance for a running game that is led by Murray and Kenyon Drake if he comes back next year. Next, we have the guy that a lot of people are taking with the Carolina Panthers pick, which I think is a great selection. Derek Brown, who deserves to be in the top 10, defensive tackle out of Auburn. Great against the run, disruptive up the middle. He is exactly what you want as a defensive tackle. Now, they did finally trade away all of their secondary from that awesome playoff run in Jacksonville. So, you could go the Grant Delpit route. You could go Xavier McKinney. You could go a couple ways. I actually have them as the landing spot for Okudah if the Lions do not take him. But for right now, just take talent, and Derek Brown's the best there is. Another one that I think is interesting if the right tackle falls to the Jets, but for me, get Sam Darnold a weapon. Nobody knows what's going to happen with Nobody knows what's going to happen with Robbie Anderson this offseason. He is a free agent. The question then comes down, who's their next best receiver? They really don't have one. I mean, they have some good tight end work there with Herndon and Anderson, but just for me, get yourself that wide receiver, and whether it's CeeDee Lamb or Judy, I think we can all agree they need work. At the 12 spot, we have, which, every mock draft on the planet does currently, we have the Las Vegas Raiders taking CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver, Oklahoma. They need that piece that they thought they were going to get with Antonio Brown on that team. I love Tyrell Williams. I love Hunter Renfrow. Waller's been great. Jacobs has proven to be a steal where they got him. Carr is still putting up decent numbers, even though that team is butt. But what it comes down to is just get a playmaker for this dude. Your defense picked up immensely last year. With Abrams coming back from injury, it's just going to get better. You have Max Crosby. Farrell should be able to pick up a little bit of the weight. If this was a heavy inside linebacker class, maybe I can make that argument since Vontaze Burfict, I don't believe, will be back. But just go with the playmaker, whether it's Judy or Lamb here. Get your guy. Be happy with your receiving core and move forward. The next pick in the draft at 13 is another controversial one. I am actually a big fan of Jacoby Brissett at the quarterback position. I understand that maybe he's not going to grow to be an MVP caliber guy, but I do think he is a top 15 type guy every year. I think he's safe. I think he's an athlete. I think he's very talented. He's a great pocket passer. If you need anything, I think it was against Houston last year. He was in the end zone, basically spun out and saved the day. So I didn't want to take a quarterback here with the likes of Jordan Love next, prospect too much. I didn't really want to go too crazy with the receivers since the other guys were gone. I went safe here, and by safe I mean Javon Kinlaw. This dude was a JUCO guy. I mean, his story is unbelievable. He didn't know that the food in college was free, part of a meal plan. He just didn't know that for the first week. This dude's salt of the earth. I love him, and he is an absolute beast. He basically was at the Senior Bowl, and they decided that one day they were just like, hey, you should probably stop working out at the Senior Bowl because you impressed so many people with the last drill. So I think he's going to be a top 20 pick easily. Put him on the Colts, add him to that almost elite defense with the great linebacker core they have. Disrupt, get young. Here we go. Next pick, we have C.J. Henderson, cornerback, Florida, to the Bucs. The Bucs actually did a really good job with their secondary, even though the stats did not show that in Jamal Dean out of Auburn last year. He was a great, arguably defensive rookie of the year candidate that just didn't have the top numbers at the beginning of the season. Henderson is an interesting one because there's a couple cornerbacks you could toss in the number 2 spot, but for me, he's long, he's fast. I just enjoy him on that Bucs secondary. You could go receiver here, but they had 2 top 15 fantasy, and I know top, I believe, 5 in yards receiver last year in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. So for me, it just makes sense to help where you need it. I don't love here as the quarterback position, just because I do believe they bring in a veteran this offseason. So, get young on the defensive side of the ball. I love this next kid. I am a huge Henry Ruggs III fan, wide receiver out of Alabama, and him going to the Broncos I think would be an elite combination with Courtland Sutton. Drew Lock finished the year extremely strong. I'm not a big fan of Joe Flacco, mainly because I'm from Pittsburgh, but I just don't believe he has it left in the tank, so I'm glad that Drew Lock got his shot last year. Getting him some extra speed will be crucial next to Courtland Sutton. They really haven't had too much of the tight end position. I still do wish that Jake Butt would have a solid career, but the injury obviously was big in college, and they have a pretty weird but dynamic running game. Give them that speed, that over-the-top burner, and I guarantee Courtland Sutton's numbers raise. I guarantee Drew Lock's looked in a better light. This team would do great with Ruggs. The guy that's pretty much also been mocked every single day by your grandmother, great-grandfather, and everybody else that does mock drafts is A.J. Epinesa, defensive end out of Iowa, to the Falcons. The Falcons' front 7 was just atrocious last year. I don't understand why they won't address it a little bit more each year. I mean, I know Vic Beasley was a great talent, but sometimes you just need to move on. Give them defensive tackle help. I would like if somebody like a Kinlaw or a Brown fell here, but Epinesa has been that number 2 DE since the start of the process. I believe in his, I think he's 6'7" with crazy reach. I like the guy here. Instant pick for me. This next one at 17 brings up a little controversy based around who the top safety in the draft is. A lot of people have Xavier McKinney out of Alabama here. I just like Grant Delpit. If you really, the question could be, well, why are we watching tape from 2 years ago? 2 years ago, Grant Delpit was amazing. Lights out. He was the reason that they had him projected as a top 5 pick. This year, with better talent around him, doesn't have quite the same year. But for me, he's still an amazing put in right now secondary option that the Cowboys could use. Could they go with McKinney here? Sure, of course. I just prefer Delpit. The Miami Dolphins back in it, and they are lucky enough here to have one of the best tackles in the draft, Andre Thomas, who traditionally played on the right but showed he can play on the left, come up here and be a part of this young core with Tua. So not only do they get their franchise quarterback of the future, they get their tackle of the future, which is unbelievable for them in this spot. Then we get Xavier McKinney, safety out of Alabama for the Raiders. Carl Joseph is expected to test free agency, meaning that Jonathan Abrams will be their main safety. Add in a guy like McKinney there. I understand that there's a couple other positions here, but McKinney is an instant starter, and you're plugging him into a defense that is already extremely young and ready to win now. I love this pick. I think it makes sense. You could obviously go a couple different routes here. You could go offensive line. You could go linebacker, which may be a little short here. But for me, I just love Xavier McKinney. Christian Fulton, cornerback, LSU. The Jaguars have a really good slew of picks this year. A lot of it due to the fact that nobody wants to play in Jacksonville. I like Christian Fulton. He's an athlete. He's long. He might not be as fast as some other corners, but he might be able to mend the broken heart that is Jalen Ramsey leaving. I don't know. You could go Trayvon Diggs here for a little bit. I understand that comparison. I understand that if Delpit falls, that would be a very interesting one. You could go defensive tackle, defensive line. I just think Fulton, for me, fits the Jacksonville Jaguars mantra. The Eagles really would have wished that Henry Ruggs didn't have a great combine when they don't get him. I would have loved to be able to mock him here, give them a younger Deshaun Jackson in the speed, but also I think he's a better all-around wide receiver right now, obviously right now, than Deshaun Jackson, but in his career. I love Ruggs, so stop talking there. But they do get the guy that was projected to be one of the top 2 receivers early on, which is Laviska Shenault Jr. out of Colorado. There are questions. He has a couple injuries. He's been playing so much at Colorado. Is that going to affect him? But I think he has a legitimate shot at being a wide receiver 1 in this NFL. On an offense that is losing to look Nelson Aguilar in the face and basically say, get out of here, as well as Alshon Jeffrey, this team really doesn't have anything. I'm a big fan of Arcega Whiteside out of college. I just worry that he will never be the wide receiver 1. So get Carson Wentz some talent. Laviska Shenault Jr., boom, 21. I was interested with this pick, and Moorhead kind of talked me into Jefferson, liking him a little bit more, that slot receiver type, bigger body, slower frame. He compares nice to me with John Brown, who was the Buffalo Bills' #1 wide receiver last year, which started a lot of arguments in my friend group that I kept calling him a wide receiver 1. Justin Jefferson here is, he's a solid receiver. He's very good. There's other names that you can go with right now if you want a burner or a big body, but Justin Jefferson is a plug-and-play guy right now. Get Josh Allen the talent. That defense is incredible up in Buffalo. Get that offense going. The Patriots finally get there. Next, the heir apparent. Even though they have not given up hope on Jarrett Stidham, who I have in Dynasty, so if he pops off, I'll be pretty happy. They get Jordan Love here, who Jordan Love is getting these comparisons to Patrick Mahomes, and it's really weird to me. I think the kid is good. I think that this past tape was not a fair example of how talented he can be. I think he has a very high ceiling. I think his ceiling could be higher than Herbert's. The problem with Justin Love is he could also be your quintessential bust. I think obviously the teams know a little bit more than me, but if the Patriots are getting into it right now and they are, realizing that Tom Brady's gone, even if they bring in a veteran, I think drafting a guy like Love will either A, kick Stidham in the butt and make him better, or just B, you have your quarterback of the future in Jordan Love. Just for the record, I don't see Love falling here because I do see trades happening, but for the sake of our mocks, we don't allow trades. The surprise pick of my mock is that my quarterback with the best arm in the draft, Jacob Eason, taken by the New Orleans Saints. And obviously the Saints had Teddy Bridgewater, who went 5-0 in their system early on in the season. He is leaving for free agency, meaning that their backup is Taysom Hill, who they said can be a franchise quarterback, which I still I get it. I don't believe it, but I get why they would say it. So here's what I'm saying. Drew Brees has 1 year left. I fully believe this is his last year, Super Bowl or no Super Bowl. You have to get a guy that you think is actually going to be your franchise quarterback. And very realistically, Taysom Hill plays such a big role in that offense. What if he does get hurt? What if he does tear an ACL? What if he does get a concussion? Something. You have nothing. Just bring in Eason, get that big arm, learn under Drew Brees, get in Sean Payton's offense. You'll be happy for the future. I feel like the Vikings are always the weirdest people to mock in every draft because they have a very, very above average team. Like them and another team, the Titans, that is obviously upset. Their teams are just above average. They're not great. So you're I don't know what they really need. They obviously need a little cornerback help after last year, but I think Xavier Rhodes comes back in. So I went with Ross Blacklock, defensive tackle out of TCU, big body, put him in there. Their whole division with the Packers and the Lions up there in Chicago, just good defenses, good on offensive lines. Get Blacklock in there, compete against these offensive lines, get to the quarterbacks. That division is winnable by anybody as long as, Aaron Rodgers doesn't have GOAT seasons, which he does a lot. But Ross Blacklock, instantly put him in. I like the pick for the Vikings. It is a lot of fun mocking draft picks for the Miami Dolphins. It makes you excited and I want to be in the room. Because if you're telling me we walked out of day one with arguably the best quarterback, a top 4 or 5 tackle in a class that is top heavy, tackle in Thomas, and then you telling me we get the #1 running back in DeAndre Swift in the first round and we didn't have to give up anything, I'm ecstatic. I love DeAndre Swift. He's just the prototypical NFL running back. He really is. There's another running back that does go in the first round, which I think will surprise everybody, and it was more of a shock thing. But I don't love this running back class that much. I think Swift is a great fit no matter where he ends up, whether that is with the Falcons, whether another team takes a shot at him. I like Jonathan Taylor a lot. J.K. Dobbins, I think, is shifting. We'll see what happens. The kid out of LSU, who I think I called CHE, I cannot remember his name for the life of me. I think he could be in that conversation. And then Cam Akers out of Florida State could be there as well. But for me, Swift is the easy #1 running back here, barring some massive injury or something. So Dolphin walks away with their offense completely revamped. Next, the Seattle Seahawks, and I really, really, really wanted one of the safeties to fall here. I think Grant Delpit would be the perfect Seattle Seahawk. I also thought about a cornerback here, but if you consider they're losing Jadeveon Clowney and their pressure needs to stay the same for a bad secondary, I would almost rather have a guy that's maybe getting to the quarterback than a guy that's just covering one side of the field. Obviously, that's probably going to change come draft time. They'll take somebody I've never heard of, as the Seahawks tend to do. But Clavon Chason, which I know is not his name, Clavon Chason, I believe. But Clavon Chason just sounds too much fun to say. Big body guy. His big knock coming out of college was that why did he not produce well when other teams had to throw the ball? Because it was like, I know what they're going to do. For me, he's just a freak. I think he's going to instantly fit in with the Seattle Seahawks pressure up front. And I think, sometimes you just got to say talent and athletes, they work in the NFL. Almost too perfect of a pick, in my opinion, is Kenneth Murray, inside linebacker here for the Baltimore Ravens. They lost C.J. Mosley. Mosley wasn't really much of today's linebacker, but he's still an animal. He goes to the Jets. So if Isaiah Simmons doesn't magically fall to 28, I'm going with Kenneth Murray out of Oklahoma. Solid linebacker. I like the kid. He's a fringe, round 1 pick for me, just based off he's not the greatest linebacker position. I thought Zach Bond out of Wisconsin here for a little bit, but just go with Murray, make the instant pick, and get the Ravens near another Super Bowl run. Julian Okwara, defensive end out of Notre Dame for the Tennessee Titans. A lot of people have Yetur Gross-Matos drafted here. I think Okwara, by the time the draft comes around, is going to surpass him. I mean, I don't know. It's just one of those things, man. It's something about Penn State defensive ends that I'm not in love with anymore. But Okwara had a good season. Athlete again, very similar to Chason. A lot of people have Okwara above Chason. It just really comes down to your preference. For me, the Tennessee Titans need a couple things. I thought about running back here if they don't bring back Derrick Henry. If any of the quarterbacks were here, maybe they go with like a Jake Fromm or something if they don't bring back Tannehill, but I believe they do. And their secondary is still decent despite the fact that they are going to have to shift some things around. I just think that getting that pressure for the Titans to maintain that defense, especially with someone like Simmons on that line, is great. The Packers haven't drafted offensive talent basically in the last decade. I think they got Adams in the second. They had a tackle somewhere in there, but they always go defense. And how often is Aaron Rodgers going to save you the game? Well, you could say every week. But let's get him a little bit of help in T. Higgins, wide receiver out of Clemson. Adams is a big body. Devontae Adams, a wide receiver they have. He's obviously a red zone threat. I don't love any of the receivers here as much as I do with Higgins. Higgins is just, a big-bodied receiver that I think pairs well with Devontae Adams. Throw him in here because Geronimo Allison and Valdez Scantling just aren't getting it done for me. They're going to get rid of Jimmy Graham. You have to get the best quarterback in the NFL weapons, or else he's not going to have anybody to throw the ball to. And Lazard is not enough. One of the surprise picks I have at the end here is mainly because I don't believe the 49ers or the Chiefs are going to be here. I believe they trade down for a little bit more. I mean, maybe not the Chiefs, but I think the 49ers do trade down. But if they are made to pick here, get the burner, Jalen Reagor out of TCU at wide receiver. They're going to lose Emmanuel Sanders. They still have George Kittle. The offense is very much a bunch of really good pieces. It's not like one thing, in my opinion. So get a guy that is a burner. I mean, they're probably going to get rid of Marquise Goodwin. So Reagor is fast. He's a good receiver. He'll be a nice addition to this team. One of the best, most well-rounded teams we've seen in a long time, considering their defense front seven. Secondary was elite. Run game was elite. Offensive line, I had a tackle here originally, but Reagor, I just liked it. There is a tackle that I probably should have gone first round, but it's only a mock. And the last pick of the first round of the 2020 mock draft is Jonathan Taylor, running back, Wisconsin. The Chiefs, in my opinion, are kind of a running back away from being great. They could go line here. They could go secondary. I just like Jonathan Taylor here. I'm a big fan of him. He impressed people at the Combine. I originally had J.K. Dobbins in this vicinity just because he is the better fit for Kansas City. But if Greg really wants me to go best player available, Jonathan Taylor is the best running back available, even if he doesn't fit the scheme. Just who I'm going with. I think that he's going to impress a lot of people. And Wisconsin running backs always get that flack because it's like, oh, well, you had one of the best lines ever. Yeah, but you still got to do it. I mean, Zeke still runs even though the Cowboys had an insane line. Thank you guys very much for checking out Deke's Mock Draft 2.0 Post-Combine. We'll be talking about it on Two Beers Deep, the live show on Facebook. And basically every time you guys see us, that's all we want to talk about. So let me know. I hope you enjoy all the content on YouTube that has been coming out, as well as Facebook and everything. And we'll catch you later.